you want to just write it so that, I mean, you don't want to milk it into some huge big thing. I mean, I'd prefer you to be honest about it. No, that's fine.
George Harrison handed Eric Clapton a guitar in 1973 and said nothing. But what followed wasn't a jam session. It was a duel between two men connected by music and torn apart by love. For 2 long hours, their guitars spoke louder than any words ever could. Every note carrying the pain of betrayal and heartbreak, every chord echoing the fight for the same woman, Pattie Boyd. Everyone watching could feel the tension, and by the end, it was clear to all that Eric had won, not through aggression, but through control and emotion. Yet, this showdown didn't start that night. It began 3 years earlier, when Clapton confessed his love for George's wife, and George discovered his own infidelities had finally come full circle. George Harrison's story began far from fame and heartbreak. Born on February 25, 1943, in a tiny Liverpool house with no garden and an outdoor toilet. His father worked as a bus conductor, his mother as a shop helper, and on quiet Sundays, she would listen to Indian music, not knowing those sounds would one day define her son's spiritual and musical journey. When George was 6, his family moved to a council house, and at 16, he quit school, took a job as an apprentice electrician by day, and played music by night. That small decision set him on a path that would change history. By 1960, George was performing in the smoky clubs of Hamburg with the Beatles, too young to even be there, having faked his age on his passport. Just 2 years later, the Beatles' world exploded into fame, but George always stood a little apart, quieter, more introspective. When he wrote his first song, Don't Bother Me, while sick in a hotel room in 1963, it was less about fame and more about testing his voice, something that would take years to be truly heard within the band. By 1965, when he picked up a sitar on the set of Help, a new sound was born, one that blended East and West and forever changed modern music. But by the time the Beatles began falling apart in 1969, George had already outgrown the band's shadow, his heart searching for something deeper. At the same time, Eric Clapton's journey was equally filled with pain and genius. Born in 1945, he grew up believing his grandmother was his mother, and his real mother was just an older sister. When the truth came out, he withdrew into himself. And by 13, he found his escape in the guitar. His obsession consumed him, and by the time he joined the Yardbirds, his reputation as one of the best guitarists alive was already forming. But fame didn't heal him. It broke him further. From Cream to Blind Faith, from addiction to emotional collapse, Clapton lived between brilliance and destruction. When George invited him in 1968 to play on While My Guitar Gently Weeps, their friendship was sealed in music. Clapton's emotional solo transformed the song, and the bond between them deepened into something brotherly, until love came between them. Pattie Boyd, George's wife since 1966, was the muse both men adored. By 1970, Eric could no longer hide his obsession, confessing to George that he was in love with Pattie, shattering their friendship in a single moment. Pattie was stunned, torn between loyalty and longing, but she stayed with George, at least for a while. Eric poured his pain into Layla, the haunting anthem of impossible love that turned his heartbreak into legend. Behind the scenes, George was unraveling, hiding his guilt, his affairs, and his exhaustion behind spiritual talks and cocaine-fueled nights. By 1973, everything collapsed when Pattie caught George in bed with Ringo Starr's wife, Maureen. The betrayal cut through their circle of friends like a knife. The Beatles' brotherhood that once changed the world was now a web of broken trust. When Pattie finally left George in 1974 and began her secret affair with Eric, it felt like fate completing its cruel design. That year, George confronted Eric not with anger, but with music. He handed him a guitar, and the two played in silence, their instruments crying out everything they couldn't say. It was a duel of hearts, and when it ended, there was no applause, just quiet understanding that something sacred had ended. Eric and Pattie eventually married in 1979, and George, ever the gentleman, even attended, joking that he and Eric were now husbands-in-law. The bitterness faded, but the wounds never truly healed. Eric's addictions destroyed the marriage, and Patty eventually left him too, saying the love that once inspired Layla had become a nightmare. Years later, in 2001, when George passed away, it was Eric who led the tribute, organizing the concert for George at the Royal Albert Hall. As he played "While My Guitar Gently Weeps," the song that had once symbolized their friendship and rivalry, his eyes filled with tears. It was as if all the pain, love, and regret of decades were finally released in that single performance. It wasn't just a farewell to a friend. It was a confession, a closure, and perhaps forgiveness at last. Subscribe to Hollywood Bulletin and press the bell icon to explore more untold stories behind the legends who shaped music history.